Good evening again, everybody. We are exploring a most exciting subject. And as I said to you at the start of our session last week, the aim and the purpose really is to plumb the depths of logotherapy and to scale its heights. And that I experience that we are too much in the shallow waters of understanding when it comes to logotherapeutic concepts. And it is so important actually to experience these concepts in depth and let these concepts lead us to the heights of understanding, because it affects our lives. It's how we experience life. And therefore, the more we understand what life is about as it is expounded in logotherapy, and again, what makes logotherapy so riveting is that it has been tested in the fire of afflictions. So that is why it is something that is to be very real to us and very close to us. And since Frankl said that the essence of human existence is responsibility, this is the feature that I've decided we should start exploring. I think our exploration will be ongoing, not just in terms of my contributions, but in terms of yours and whoever else would want to add to the subject from their particular perspectives. We considered the boundaries, the sacred boundaries of responsibility at our last session. And we will understand more what that sacredness is by looking at what we will be focusing in on today, namely the response of responsibility. This is actually the core of our human existence, truly, that we are able to respond. What does that imply? It immediately implies that we do feel called upon, that something confronts and challenges and invites us to give a response. And we will see that that response is called responsibility because deeply embedded inside ourselves, that Frankl described as our unscathed human spirit, there is the desire, the inclination, the will to meet this call in the right way, in a way that makes true connection and sets into play an interaction, which is the enlivening of our entire spirit. You know, when God created Adam, he said it is good. Why? Because Adam, as the representative of the first human being, has the ability to hear, to respond, and, to contemplate the call. And in terms of how am I to respond to this call? How am I to connect to the one who calls? But God went on to say it's not good for man to be alone, because it is in our interaction, in our relationship with each other, that we are actually discovering the nature of the call upon the lives of every one of us. And what is more, that we will discover that this call comes to us in a profoundly personal sense. And this is what I want to explore today, this profound personal response to a profoundly personal call. to each one of us. That call is embedded in us as a desire to respond. And we last week called it the sacred boundaries of responsibility. What keeps this connection sacred? What makes it real? What makes it supremely right? And what disturbs that connection? What intrudes and actually derails us or leads us away from a real response and causes deviations, and that we are led off course and fall into traps of despair and disillusionment and, you know, what Frankl called the existential vacuum, because actually each one of us are given an assigned space. Our lives have got an assigned place in this world, in terms of even historical situations where each one throughout the course of human history had an assigned place and an assigned role to play, and we are part of the evolvement of the human story towards what? Human greatness, to become what we ought to be. And what we are essentially exploring is what Frankl said, what man is. He is not yet, but ought to be and should become. It is a progression, even in our own lives, as it is in the history of mankind. It's a learning process. It's an opening up process. It's a growth in wisdom and understanding. And I want to actually start today with where we left off last week. And we left off, the very last voice we heard in our discussion last week was the voice of rain. And I promised you that I would today explore one of her sessions that she had with a woman who became a prostitute. And in the story, there is such a clear demonstration of the need to reach out and to connect. But if that connection cannot be made, that it is sought for desperately in wrong places, but it's still sought for and struggled to find, and there is still a struggle to find it. And through the disillusioning experiences of searching for the good in bad places, there comes the realization of what it is that, that the woman was really looking for, that we are really looking for in all our struggles. And, you know, I said to you, this is how I want to expound logotherapy, that we go to the depths of where a person experienced a crisis of meaning. And that we can then also see that through their experiences of suffering and guilt, and the waste of time around struggles to find, there comes the realization of what it is they really needed and that they suffered a lack from, and why their suffering has led them to places where they were confronted with the question of, what is it that I'm really seeking for? This is not it. This, you know, like Frankl said, suffering makes us aware of what ought not to be. So it increases the desire for what ought to be. And this call that is embedded in us as a desire to meet that call, to respond to that call, is awakened. So I want to explore this session with you. A pity that Rain is not with us, but I'm going to ask her actually to give us a presentation of what she said. She had another logotherapy encounter with a male prostitute.
I
It's
am
quite
here.
fascinating.
I am here.
Oh, Rain, I'm so glad you are. Great,
Yeah.
great, great. We're gossiping about you. Now you know, now the gossip is no longer gossip. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And you know, I wrote this in my book. I recorded this session because it was so incredibly precious. I called it From Shame to Conviction. Because, you know, when we lose touch with ourselves and what we really want to be, and what we know essentially and intuitively we ought to be, we feel shamed. But you know, that very shame can lead to a strong conviction of what it is that we really want to be, what we are actually called to be. And that suffering serves to refine that call. And I always say, somebody who's gone through the depths can tell us more of the heights than those who have sailed through life without too much trouble. In fact, it underlines what Frankl said, you know, take suffering and guilt and death out of the picture and you destroy life's meaning, because actually we are called to overcome every question against the meaningfulness of life and the worthiness of our own person. Because only then do we come to a level of conviction to be able to say, as we will consider in the last of the series, here I am, send me. I'm no longer held back. I'm no longer fallen into a pit. I'm no longer despairing. I'm no longer struggling to find what I'm looking for in all the wrong places. Here I am, in the moment, every moment from now on. That's what Frankl called an existential roundabout. You know, Christians call it a born-again experience. Right. So I just want to read the comments I made as I've reflected again on the session that I will describe to you in a minute. The call, Adam, where are you? To come out of shame into conviction. And I said that that call is embedded in us as a yearning to fulfill it. And why did I react to Rain the way I did when she was joining us last week and I didn't realize that she was there? Because she has made such an exceptional journey that actually describes to us this fundamental yearning to be yourself, to connect to life, to discover it, to explore it, to interact with it, to be out there in the world in a real and, you know, very a very authentic kind of way. She described herself as one of those children that threw temper tantrums. But you know, there are temper tantrums and there are temper tantrums. But the kind of temper tantrum that I believe and Rain can tell us more about it when she presents her session that she had, was the frustration of being thwarted in her own wonder-like, childlike, pure exploration of the wonder of being in this world and the joy of experiencing it and the deep desire to launch out into her life and to put a stamp on her life, which she did. This is me. And don't you dare deny me who I am. She put sacred boundaries around herself that said, trespassers not allowed. And that was the kind of and I described it in another session that I had with a catatonic schizophrenic girl, that in protest against the way that she was being minimized by an over-domineering mother, where she could say no. That's the kind of no, a very, very important no that we should all learn to say in our overcoming of that which want to minimize, degrade, humiliate, and actually silence our voices and influence in this world. Last presentation, we actually looked at the unscathed human spirit, that man is spirit and is born with spiritual capacities, which is born with this fundamental outreach to respond. And we see it in a child in its need to, in its connection with a significant other, to emerge out of himself, to grow, and to become all that the child intuitively feels it potentially is, and therefore can become. And so this calling is a calling to become all that you were created to be. And we saw that so graphically in the responses of infants that could connect and those who could not connect. And we saw that, the infant really needs a yes from life. We need a face that looks at us, that sees us, ears that hear us, that affirm our existence. But do you know, we are not totally dependent on experiencing that yes, if we do not find it in our childhood years. In fact, as I already said, the frustration of not having it launches us into a search to find it. And that is why Frankl said, meaning is found, and it is there to be found. And we can find it despite the fact that we may not have had those life-affirming experiences from significant others in our lives as we grew through our childhood years. So let us look at this particular client that Rain saw, and that she had such a successful and deep encounter with. Because here we are, as logotherapists, we are called to look at a client with an orientation of unconditional love, to say to the person, you are unconditionally worthy, and I want to discover you behind all your conflicts. In fact, I want to look at those conflicts as to why they happened to you in terms of calling you forth. There is never a negative in life once we realize who we are. Then we have the courage to overcome every blockage, every obstacle along our way. And as we do, we actually become more triumphantly ourselves. So this was a woman who liked, when she was a child, to sit on the lap of her father. That was something that she very often did and wanted to do. And the question immediately arose, why? And as Rain gathered more information, a greater background about this woman, it became clear that the father, in fact, wanted a girl and even gave her a boy's name, So that, love is sensed, isn't it? Intuitively, this little girl, this woman as a little girl, sensed that there wasn't a real connection to her as a little girl, as a person. And she wanted that connection. That's why she clambered onto his lap. And this was all right until she started menstruating and developing feminine features. And the father's reaction was so insane. He wouldn't even allow her to use his shower. There was something repulsive about her sexuality to him. And can you imagine what that did to her? As she was emerging as a girl, growing into womanhood, she was being shamed with the feelings of being rejected by, not found, actually be found disgusting by the very figure that she was trying to connect to. And this derailed her and sent her on the road to promiscuity. To be seeking this contact, this sexual contact of things that went so wrong with her father in all sorts of places. And her first encounter as a 14-year-old girl, was a shocking experience to her. She says, I shut off somewhere. And, it's so incredible what she said at the end of the sessions with Rain, that she withdrew into herself. She built walls around her unscathed human spirit. But as she was trying to make a connection through sexual encounters, but all along felt that this isn't really it. This isn't really it. And she never experienced orgasms in her sexual encounters, which is quite a important thing to notice. Why? Because to her, an orgasm is actually a sign of a successful sexual encounter where you really have made contact in such a deep way with someone that that ecstasy of an orgasm follows. This only happened when she had a friendship with an older man, and again one would say older man. And that when she experienced her first orgasm, why? He was closer to the father figure. We are going to look at the psychological unconscious, what Freud described as the Oedipus complex, in a completely different way from the way that it is really always interpreted. The shameful images that people in psychological conflict repress into the psychological unconscious is why? Why? Because it shames me. Why? Because that desire is out of place. But in a natural form, a little girl needs to connect to her father as her first male figure. And she needs the experience of being valued and delighted in as a little female. This is her first heterosexual relationship. And how many things go wrong here for boys as well, when they can't really find their connection with a mother for all sorts of reasons, that their first heterosexual relationship was derailed. Coming back to Rain's client, she began waitressing, when this relationship didn't work, it was like such a despair. She began waitressing in a brothel and eventually became a prostitute herself. But she described it as if she was watching herself, what her body was doing. She wasn't really in what she was doing. But, it's an incredible thing. We'll look at it more when we look at psychopathology, that we actually, in our desperate urge to connect, sometimes do the very things that that we are being accused of, or that where we have been found fault with. In our next session, with Pan's permission, I will share a part of her story, because, you know, as an abused little girl sexually, she chose abusive husbands. You know, and like this client did, torturous sexual relationships. You know, it is a distorted way of wanting to connect. That's why I call psychopathology a lie. It's not that we really have these ugly urges that we have to hide away. We're hiding away an effort to keep ourselves intact. And, you know, we can't stand looking at ourselves and in a way that we've been looked at when we were hurt and shamed and humiliated and degraded. We can't stand that. We know that's not true. And we have to struggle through that, as this woman wonderfully did. You know, when Rain saw her, you know, that she was reflecting back on her life. But and Rain went right back to where it all started, you know, as I trained her to do. But she was then in a relationship with a married man as his mistress, a much older man. But, you know, as this, again, you know, she went out of her prostitution again into an effort to relate to an older man in a more kind of faithful way. But this is what, you know, the rivetingly things that she said with to Rain at the end of her therapy, when she really broke through into a realization as to what she was actually doing and what she was actually searching for, and why she had gone off course in that kind of a way, what her struggle essentially was all about. She described it in this way when she came to a final conclusion, looking back on her life of sexual promiscuity and adultery. I have dishonored myself. Listen, I have dishonored myself. At the time, it didn't feel like sex, but it was just about body parts. But there was something more, something possibly more sacred than I have ever allowed. The realization that I had possibly not loved myself. This is the damage that unloving attitudes do. They make us not love ourselves. We doubt our own worth, and we can't stand that, because we need to feel worthy. We need to feel a worthy part of life. We need to feel that we have a reason to be here and that it's a good one. Otherwise, we spiritually die. We can commit suicide when we cannot make that connection of being a worthy part of life. And she said this: I had not loved myself. I have shown myself no respect. I just gave myself away. That is my sadness, really, that I gave myself away. And then she said, I always knew that what I was doing was wrong, that it's a no, a no. She said, but now just listen how she describes her own emerging sanctity of spirit that broke through into a conviction, from where she started off in shame to where she came through in a conviction of who she really was. She described it this way: I've locked myself up, not anymore. I have a desire to not have any secrets. I want to be out there authentically myself in the world. I can't be in any secretive relationships that I have to hide from myself. There are many things that have made me want to get out of what I was doing. Also because I want to have an opportunity to have a loving relationship. And I don't think that's available while I'm still in something like this, a relationship with this married man that she stepped out of. Isn't that incredible? And you know, if you just listen, you'll hear your clients saying this in different kind of words. There is another session that I recorded done by another of my students, Andrea Tro, in Johannesburg, with a bulimic woman that was so self-absorbed in her bulimia, but also that started through the way Andrea was relating to her, looking at her, a probing through to the real self behind the bulimia, that she started emerging. And she said this, well, here is a real recording of the session. Andrea asked her at the end of their therapy, out of your suffering, you have chosen a new way. What is this new way? You know, you always ask your client to elaborate, to describe it, to express it more, because then it becomes clearer to them. That's why logotherapy is such a questioning technique. It's a, you know, it truly is a call for the person to emerge and to express themselves and to give voice to themselves and to define themselves and to draw those sacred boundaries around themselves to say, no more trespassing allowed. Oh my, what an achievement when we reach, and every time I've reached this with a client, I can't tell you what it does to me. It really is a celebration of the defiant and victorious human spirit that is being invested in all of us. She went on to say this. Now, when the therapist asked her, what is this new way? She said, to live more honestly. No secrets. Oh God, this thing keeps on coming onto my screen. Anyway, can you imagine, Andrea asked her, that there is a part of you that is untouched and was untouched by this illness, this diagnosis of bulimia. It's been there throughout the addiction. And this part of you has remained intact. And you know, sometimes you formulate what the client is really saying, and you bring out that meaning. And look how the client responded. She said, ah, that is a wonderful way of looking at it. Yes, yes, yes. And then the therapist asked her, now, how would you describe this? And she said, well, I suppose this part would be okay with myself, when I'm at home with myself, when I like myself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. How can you love your neighbor if you do not love yourself? Because you will be doubting that they are really as loving as you actually need to tell them they are deep inside them, because you're doubting your own worth. So you're doubting their worth as well. And she said, this is a part that would be okay with myself. And look at what she says. It is innocent. The spirit that is given to us is a pure, unscathed spirit, a potential for human greatness, and that we can triumphantly say no to what spoils and harms and damages us, not only in ourselves, but in those we are trying to help. And, you know, it needn't just be clients. It can be your children. It can be your spouse. It can be whoever comes across your way. This is what makes your life unique, because you are in a situation that nobody else has ever been in or will ever be in again. Your space is a one and only space made just for you to occupy. So she went on to say, this is what I value in myself, being innocent. We want to find our unscathed, pure, innocent spirits. And this is why I started last week with looking at the emerging newborn and growing child. Because, you know, I was thinking of the humanist Maslow that said he was a behaviorist, which, you know, believed that we are shaped and formed by environmental influences and so on. We are the product of our environment and whatever we are inherited with. And he said until he had his first child, and when he held that newborn little boy in his arms, he said, I could no longer be a behaviorist. He saw that pure, innocent outreach of a little person calling to be responded to and to connect with and to come into an interaction with and to emerge and grow. With what? Now I'm going to end the session in that. How do we experience this inherent innocence and purity of soul, who we potentially are, and how do we then know what it is that we ought to be, that we can set ourselves on the path of becoming. I wrote this, and I think I just want to read it to you because I want us to have a little bit of a discussion afterwards, not like last week when we went over the set time. I want to ask you, what places a stamp of approval on our existence? You know, that makes us feel, I am, and I'm worthy, I'm needed, I'm called, I'm here for a purpose. What places such a stamp of approval on our existence? Only one thing. Only one thing. Love. Love sees and hears us, acknowledges us, gives us a sense of identity. Love gives us a name that nobody knows but us. You know, there are maybe many Didos in this world, but Didos are quite an unusual name. Take Mary. There may be many Marys, but the one Mary that you are is just you. A name that nobody knows but you. A unique name, a unique stamp on your person. And nothing will make us move out of ourselves and into the world, or enable us to perform our unique mission or singular contribution to life, but love. Love is the alpha and the omega of our lives, the ordained beginning and end of it. Finding and believing in our own unconditional worth as a person, and finding and believing in the unconditional worth of the persons of others, of those near and dear to us, of our clients, of everyone life brings across our paths for healing, we find an ultimate connection to the very heights of being, to the divine itself, himself. So in the light of what I've said now, and we are going to explore this in our next session in a deeper way, what are the responses we are being asked to give in our relationships one to the other? What earmarks our responses as singularly human? Because they are humane. What is humane? It's loving, it's considerate, it's respectful, it's affirming of each other's uniqueness. Love brings out our essence, what is singular and unique and of great worth in each one of us. Love makes us great. It causes us to flourish and spiritually blossom. Love makes us grow into full human stature. Love affirms who we truly are and what we are meant to be. Love inspires us to become what we ought to be. Okay, now we can go over into a discussion.
I wanted to just thank you and also comment as you're building up to the one thing that that gives us the stamp, one thing that gives our clients the stamp. And I was, you know, how you very quickly start to finish the sentence, as you know, we all try to do. And then the word love comes out. And it's so profound. It doesn't deflate the moment. It makes it profound in that exhale that says, of course, of course. That is what gives a client an identity that can be explored, that opens a canvas that they can start to paint and resonate with. When we start to interpret that for people, that's where I think we start to slide into the expert space, where we want them to take ownership and responsibility and respond from within their own resources. But that word love means that they are the ones painting that canvas. They are the ones that get to connect and interpret and create from that space. And so, yes, to say the word love in such a profound moment as that, it obviously makes sense. But when we expand it into how will a client resonate with that and be able to take from that canvas, that point, and respond, it's empowering. Then it is no longer a weapon, it's a worship. You know, that's when it starts to come alive. So thank you for that and for building it up in a way that got me going, okay, I've got the answer to this. And then I'm like, whoa, okay, no, that is profound. So thank you for that moment. For me, that was lovely. Thank you so much.
Great. You know, what we are essentially exploring is what Viktor Frankl said so profoundly. He said, you know, love sees the uniqueness of the other. And if we treat people as they should be, we help them to become it, because, you know, that's the potential. It's you are actually more and more in a process of becoming. And it never stops.
Teria, can I say something?
Please.
This really is relevant to what I've just been talking about in my class, and like because of confidentiality, I won't get into the details of it. But the case was not in therapy itself, but in life, where the person was confronted with a kind of withdrawal of love from somebody. Why? Because of the way she was behaving. And in that moment, she said, but that's not who I am. but that is who I am. You know, it's just like the two sentences came out right at the same time from her mouth. It's not, in other words, she felt the gap between this is not really who I am. And that stopped in its tracks, the behavior that years of therapy, you know, not logotherapy, different kind of therapy, did not change.
Yes.
And then just like that, it changed.
Oh man, you know, and you know what is love really like? I mean, love doesn't, it expects the best and it draws out the best and it wants the best, but it doesn't judge. And it doesn't hold love out as, you know, acceptance out as a condition. I will love you only if you are what you're supposed to be. You know, this was what the truth that hit home to me so much in our last session, that, you know, I'm not just loved for my uniqueness. I'm loved even with all my faults and failures and strugglings, because love is compassionate. It's patient. Patience. Patient. It is slow to anger. All the attributes of God's mercy. That is love. And it doesn't judge. It never judges. It calls forth. It is sad. Like that client said, she's so sad that she gave herself away. It's sad if somebody misbehaves, but never should we withdraw our love when somebody misbehaves. In fact, we should become even more zealous in our love to pursue that person, to say, I'm not going to give up on you, even though you're behaving badly. I know that's not you. And that you're struggling to find yourself. And it doesn't matter how long you struggle, I am there for you. I am with you always, in all situations. We never withdraw our love. The moment we withdraw it, you know, this is a whole topic in itself. What is true discipline? Discipline is a correction in love. You correct and you reprimand, and you ask, you know, you go into discussion as to why a behavior is wrong or what it does. This is what we do in logotherapy, but only because you want to draw the person out of that behavior, but not because you judge that behavior. You know, you judge the person in that behavior. That's what I should really say. A topic that I want to still pursue is really what we also need to think about, you know, people who really become evil and real perpetrators. There's a great lesson to be learned there as well, but this is for another occasion. Mm-hmm.
Teria,
yeah.
We have two hands raised. First Sarah and then Lauren.
Thank you.
Sarah, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Teria. I feel very inspired, and I feel like I had a big aha moment. You know, we started, or the topic was responsibility, and we ended with love. And it made me think, okay, our responses, where do they come from? And for me, if we dig down, they can come from fear or they come from love. And so with that awareness in ourselves, with the cultivation of self-love in ourselves, by being a mirror for the unconditional love and beauty of the human spirit for our clients, for the people, I feel like there's such a beautiful potential to help us step into the responsibility and choose our responses from that place of love, even in the hardest moments when our mind wants to snap to fear, and we have that awareness, and we're like, and the conscience, and we're like, okay, how would my response look like if it would come from a place of love, this kind of love?
Yes.
And
yes. Well, you know, it's so wonderful. It's so affirmed in scripture. You know, it says God chastises those whom he loves. And, you know, love covers all sins, you know, and banishes all fears. My word. There it is. It's true. And I agree with you. I want to get deeper into this. I want to get more sensitive about it. I want to give greater expression to it because, you know, then there is more a release of the power of the human spirit to awaken and enlighten and to invite and challenge and to draw people out of their fears. That's why I feel we need to plumb the depths of these concepts, not just let them remain academic concepts, but how does it work in real life? Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful.
Hi,
The other
Teria.
hand, Lauren?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Oh, very well, thank you. All the better for seeing all of you. And you.
Good. I'm new, so I haven't started with any of your courses yet. I'm planning on starting and enrolling by next week. You've touched on a few things that just came to mind for me already, and that is when working with clients, I think unconditional love provides a platform for them to feel accepted.
Yes.
And that's when people are really going to open up. So love is very, very central when dealing with people.
Oh, and
Creates
Lauren,
a safe space.
thank you. But you know, we will explore exactly the nature of that love because, you know, it's different from, you know, let me say, Carl Rogers' idea of unconditional positive regard is a wonderful start, but it's not the whole story.
Okay.
Because logotherapy looks at the client, and actually life looks at the client in a more profound way. Not just to give, you know, it's not just positive psychology, it's logotherapy, which actually is much more concerned with a person coming to grips with issues of guilt and of suffering and of the meaning of life in the face of death. It's an overcoming process. It's a triumphant process. There's something complacent about you're all right, Jack, you know. And it's far more than that. Yeah.
No, agreed. It just gives them a feeling of acceptance to be able to open up. I think when that safe space is created.
Absolutely.
In a non-judgmental way.
Exactly. This is what we said in our last session, and I encourage you to go and look at it on our website. That I know, look on the session called The Intimacy of Love.
Okay.
That it is a face-to-face, what that kind of face-to-face interaction is. And I can see you intuitively grasp it anyway.
Thank you. And it's wonderful being here tonight with a special group of people I can see, and I can't wait for my journey to begin.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks.
Teria, Martha's hands raised.
Yes. Martha.
Hi, Teria. Hi, everybody. Martha. I'm very glad to be back after my difficult time. Yes. And I just want to say thank you for all your amazing input and your enthusiasm and the way that you're sharing. And yes, it's difficult to understand from responsibility to love. And if you think our responsibility is love, and as you know, my type of clients aren't really clients. I work with street people and situations like that, which is very different. But I just wanted to share that, you know, I told you in my letter that we had the situation of somebody lying in the road and trying to get hospitals and ambulances, and how the Jewish community came to help me. And we were so thankful. And yes, our street person is back, but he's alive. And I just want to share something with you that one of the guards that came out to help me said, and he said, "Ma'am, everybody deserves to live." And you know, that was such a profound statement that he said to me. I just want to share it with you. And yes, as everybody deserves to live, everybody deserves to have somebody who loves them. So yes, thank you, Teria, yes. And thank you, everybody. Lovely seeing all of you again.
Oh, wow. Wonderful, Martha. And we will also explore more deeply what Frankl meant when he said that logotherapy is an education towards responsibility, and that it's never advice, and it's never preaching, and it's never telling the client what they must do. It's this. I think one of the great rabbis of our time, he passed away not so long ago, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, said it that God has more faith in us than we have in ourselves. I think that's a wonderful saying, that we should have more faith in a client than they have in themselves. Yeah. And a wonderful remark by that person who could look at that victim and say, everyone deserves to live. Yeah.
Teria, Rain's hand's raised.
Yes, Rain, come on. Listen, I'm going to ask you to give a presentation. Okay, you're going to have your own presentation on Zoom. But all right, let's have a foretaste of what we're going to hear.
What am I going to present?
You are going to present what you said was another session with a male prostitute. We want to hear from you, okay? And because in that session, who you are is definitely going to shine through. Okay. Are you sitting before one of your paintings?
I am. This one is in work in process.
Well, yes.
I just so love it when you spark all sorts of things. You need to say something and all the lights sort of go on and spark us. So much gratitude for that. And what today sparked for me was two things. I'm not sure that everybody on the planet, unfortunately, gets to experience love, however they may, or you may consider it. I'm not sure that everybody gets that moment to consider.
No, it's so true.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it kind of got me thinking about what the opposite of love is, and then it got me thinking about opposites and how important, and I'm not really sure what the opposite of love is. Somebody brought up fear. Maybe that contributes to an opposite, but and then it took me a little bit further, that what is love? I mean, we understand love and that there are different kinds of love and different ways that we can love. But if we try and reduce love to something like maybe component parts, it's impossible. It reduces to nothing, like music. What would music be? Music moves us maybe to tears, maybe to love. Maybe music is love. But if you try to reduce music, it would reduce to notes. I don't play music, so I don't know, but I think that it would be notes. And then if we try and look at one note, well, what's a note? Well, it's nothing. But all the notes together, sometimes opposite notes, they collaborate and they come together to make music. So a whole lot of nothing, maybe opposite nothings, come together, and suddenly they present the most astonishing experience for human beings that we can't often communicate very well in words, but we know we are moved. We are moved in ways possibly in the same way as love. So I don't know what the component parts of love are.
You know what, Rain? Yeah, you bring a deep thought to me, and that is when I experienced this among Holocaust survivors who spoke about those whose spirits died. They're called Muslims because they were going about the business of bodily staying alive, but their spirits had died, along with those who really died of despair. and who, like you said, never found that connection. And yet, you know, the way that those survivors who did find, they carried these people almost, I don't know how to describe it, but she, there's this one particular Holocaust survivor, the way she didn't blame them, the way she felt for them. And well, Frankl put it this way, that even if there were just a few of them that could break through to the level of still feeling connected to life in the most miserable and humiliating circumstances, that shows forth the potential that some people never come out with, and the potential remained buried, but it's still there. You know, I think we'd be so surprised to see how the oppressed and the forgotten and the lonely and the ill and the discarded, how in an eternal sense of the word, their lives retain their exquisite meaning, that it doesn't, there's no judgment whatsoever if somebody couldn't make that connection. Never. In fact, that is what Frankl said, I survived for the sake of those who died. I survived for the sake of those who couldn't make it. And for the sake of those who despaired, I will have meaning. You know, this accumulation of love, this embrace of love, there's another story that we can tell in terms of what we're talking about when we're talking about the love that heals and that liberates. And yeah, thank you for that thought, because I'm really going to develop that in our discussions beyond this. Thank you, Rain.
But just to finish there, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it does spark it. With love, but for somebody who has on the planet who has been touched by love, if they have been touched, then equally, I think that even if they lose that love, if it's for a person, if that person dies or it doesn't, whatever, they no longer are developing it. I think perhaps once touched, even that touch is not with you anymore, then it sparks it opens up a whole world of, well, maybe I can touch it again, and of hope. And even it never comes again. It doesn't matter, you know, you've touched it once, and there's always another chance for another experience. And that, even in the face of terrible suffering, might just be the one thing to pull you through, is what I thought, because loss could be the opposite of the love. It could be one of the opposites, but it collaborates to bring out a hope.
Wow, you see what depths you've opened up, and I'm going to let us, like we started with you, we're going to end with you. Okay, Rain? Because, you know, just this last thought, the compassion. I mean, we are actually, this is a love that drives us with compassion. You know, I remember Batya once saying, oh, give me something that I can do for somebody, you know, just so driven with compassion. And it's the compassion we feel when we look at somebody that is helplessly crippled, or that is totally mentally retarded, or is so mentally ill that you can't, you know, that the person is so hidden away. But just the faith that we express in our love for such people, in their unscathed beauty. Kanda spoke about it last week when he said that to look at the mentally afflicted in this way. And like Frankel said, even if I give a schizophrenic 1 hour of feeling loved, then I've done what I was called upon to do, even just 1 hour. That's why he said, even just one moment of meaning can flood an entire life with meaning. This is the greatness of the love that we're speaking about. And thank you for that. And see you all in our next session. Please think about it and share these ideas and come out with it. Look what emerges when we talk about these things. So thank you for every contribution tonight. And those who didn't make a contribution, I know that your thoughts, if I could see them, would just so inspire me. So good night, everybody.